Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Youth Ministry 101. My name is Tim Messenger, and once again, I'm the director of the Office of Youth and Young Adult Ministry for the Diocese of Worcester. And today is session 3, where we're going to talk about building and recruiting a core team and really the roles of what our core team should look like for youth ministry. So we're going to get started the way we have for the last couple sessions. We're going to pull up a verse. If you'd like, I invite you to do Lectio Divina if you're at the in-person sessions. You can either do that again or you can just skip on. But basically what's going to happen, I'm going to pull up a verse and just invite you, if you like, you can pause the screen, read through the verse a couple times or 3 times. The first time, pick out a word that stands out to you. The second time, focus on the words and phrases around that word and ask God, what he's trying to say in this verse. And then the third time, put yourself into the story, place yourself in that story, using your imagination to imagine Jesus speaking those words directly to you and asking God, what is he saying specifically in this verse to you in your life and your ministry right now? So we're going to pull up that verse, take a few minutes to read through it, and then we're going to continue on. Okay, so we have this verse here. This is from Luke chapter 5, verse 1 through 11. And again, if you'd like to pray with it through Lectio Divina, feel free to just pause the screen here, read through it 3 times, gradually allowing the scripture to open up to you, to hear God's voice in this passage. But I'm going to read this through one time, and then it's going to really kind of flow into what we're going to be talking about today. While the crowd was pressing in on Jesus and listening to the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret. He saw 2 boats there alongside the lake. The fishermen had disembarked and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, he asked him to put out a short distance from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. After he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and lower your nets for a catch." Simon said in reply, "Master, we have worked hard all night and have caught nothing, but at your command I will lower the nets." When they had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their nets were tearing. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come to help them. They came and filled both boats, so that they were in danger of sinking. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at the knees of Jesus and said, "Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For astonishment at the catch of fish they had made seized him and all those with him, and likewise James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners of Simon. Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you'll be catching men." When they brought their boats to the shore, they left everything and followed him. So I love this passage in Scripture, and I like it for 2 reasons. Number one, it's a great reminder of our own call to ministry. Jesus, he picks out these ordinary people, and it's not just in this passage, but I think we see this all the time in Scripture. Jesus takes ordinary people, simple people, and calls them out of an ordinary life into something extraordinary. And I think that's something that we can certainly relate with, whether it's in youth ministry or just in life in general, is that God has a calling for each and every one of us, and that's to come out of our own ordinary lives, whatever that may look like, and called to do something extraordinary, to build up the church. That's the first reason. The second reason, which may be a little more relevant to what we're talking about in this course and today, is that in this passage, Jesus really gives us a great model for doing ministry. Now, if you remember in session 1, we talked about how youth ministry is really done best when we use a model of discipleship. And obviously, that's how Jesus did his own ministries, through discipleship. It was through, first of all, starting very small. He didn't jump right away to like the feeding of the 5,000, or we have over 1 billion Catholics today. It wasn't like we just started with that. Jesus started very small with these first followers, and empowered them over the course of time to go out and build more followers, and slowly and in stages building the church into what we know it is today. And I think when we're doing our own ministry, specifically in youth ministry, we need to use that process of discipleship. Youth ministry isn't just something that appears out of nowhere, as much as we'd love for it to happen. It's not something that takes a day or a week or a month or even a year. I think practically speaking, to get a good comprehensive model of youth ministry really in place and running, in a good way. It's something that takes a good 3 to 5 years at a minimum. And I don't say that to be overwhelming, but I just say that to be realistic. And also just for our own sanity and for the sake of the programs we're running. If we tried to have this dead sprint where we created this huge thing, it would either crumble or wouldn't even get started. And so I think for our own sake and for what we're trying to do, using that process of discipleship that takes place slowly and in stages. So I want to pull up a slide, and it's very similar to a slide we used in session 1, where I just want to revisit some goals, specifically for our first 3 years in youth ministry and what some of those goals may look like year by year. So here I want to outline kind of a 3-year process, or maybe even a better way to think about it, because we don't have to necessarily think in terms of years, but maybe more of like a 3-step process in terms of when we want to fully implement a comprehensive youth ministry. So year 1, which is the one we're getting ready for now, it's about establishment. Year 2 is for growth, and then year 3, we're hoping to fully implement something. So establishing, so when we think about in terms of like a year from now, so next May, when you're hopefully at the end of your first year in ministry, what are some things that we want to be looking for? So first of all, that we've established some sort of simple, consistent program. So what I mean by this, and we're going to get more into this in the last 2 sessions when we're talking about methods, but establishing just like a simple meeting date that happens on a consistent basis. Ideally, when you're starting out, maybe it's something that's once a month. So a once a month sort of youth gathering. And to run those things, hopefully having a small core team of adults, which we're going to get more into in a little bit here. And then with that program, having, identifying a small group of teens, maybe it's just like 5 or 10 or something like that, but a small group of teens that are committed to coming on a regular basis. Maybe they're not coming to all of them. It's the ones that you see, the ones that kind of want to be there. And then with those with that group of teens, maybe finding 1 or 2 or 3 of them that really may be in those deeper stages of discipleship that we talked about in session 1. Because the reason being for this, and then the last part of it as well is identifying a small group of parents that are committed and supportive of sending their teens to youth ministry and the stuff we're doing with the program. And the reason for all these things, establishing kind of these small groups or identifying these small groups of people, is because over the course of year 2 and into year 3 is we're going to try to take those small groups of people and really empower them. So starting with the core team of adults, and maybe it's just like 3 or 4 people you have for year number 1, but empowering those people and then going and recruiting and building more people over time. With that small group of teens that are at your programs, focusing a lot of energy, and specifically in maybe those couple teens who display leadership qualities are higher up in that discipleship scale, and empowering them. So over the course of year 2, you're really giving them the tools to go out and to maybe call 2 or 3 more of their friends to bring them into the program, and kind of over the course of time slowly building those numbers. And then with families, this is the same thing. Maybe it's you have a handful of parents, maybe it's 3 or 4 different couples with children who are in the program, devoting a lot of time, not that they would be serving directly in the program, but empowering them to go out and maybe with the people they know, other parents in the parish, or building relationships with other parents. Again, this idea of discipleship, to slowly in process over time to build our program. So by year 2, we're focusing on growing that, and then year 3, hopefully having that kind of complete structure, those different stages of discipleship, that we can have programming, that we have people to run those programs, so that it doesn't fall apart, but so we have a strong base. So year 1 is really again about building that base, that foundation. Year 1 is about the building blocks of discipleship. And like I was saying just now, when we look at those goals, we're focusing on 3 groups of people. We're focusing on the core team, we're focusing on the teens themselves and identifying a small group, and then we're focusing on those families, especially that small group of families that may already be committed. So discipleship, and pull up a second slide here. This kind of is an illustration of what that looks like. So we have the youth ministry coordinator, which is you guys watching this video right now, is where it sort of starts with, and then it flows down to maybe those key parents, core team, those key youth, and then that really trickles down to parents and youth of the parish in general. And then you see at the bottom, those are our youth of the parish that we're trying to get. So that's sort of a little illustration. But discipleship really, after the pastor and after you, it really begins with that adult core team. So what is the core team? Well, simply put, if you're not familiar with this term of core team, the simplest way to put it, it's your core group of adults. It's the people who are helping you to plan and facilitate, but also support your program. And the core team is really important because, as we know, with any ministry, there's not just one person that can do it all, nor should there be one person that does do it all. And for the simplest reason that, number one, if one person was doing it all, it's very likely that they'd be burnt out. But also, two, when we're trying to have this comprehensive approach to youth ministry and this well-rounded approach, we have to have a team of people that are well-rounded. And even if you got like the most perfect person in the world, they're not going to have the skill set to deal with all these different things. We need different people, different roles, because we're dealing with different types of teenagers. We're dealing with people who are into different things, have different interests, different personalities, different things that attracts them. So we need a solid, well-rounded group of people. I think one thing to note that when we think of the core team, I think there can be, and we talked about this in session 1 a little bit as well, there can be this misconception that to do youth ministry, you have to be like a young person who's relatable. And certainly if we can get, relatable people, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. But I think to do youth ministry, you don't need to be relatable. You need to be authentic. That's the key thing we have to know to do youth ministry. And any volunteer who's doing that, they don't have to be relatable, but they do need to be authentic. And so when we think about this core team of adults who are helping us run the ministry, we need a diverse group of people. We need old people. We need young people. We need single people, married people. We need people who are artistic. We need people that are creative, people that are funny, people that are organized, people that are disorganized, people that, need to plan, people that can go on the fly, down to earth people, lighthearted people, sense of humor, people that know sports, all different types of people. We need those people to help us run youth ministry. And I'm sure when you go to your parish tomorrow, you're just going to find them all knocking at the door, right? No, probably not. But that's why it's a process, because certainly we'd want this group of people. And I'm trying to paint sort of the ideal picture of a core team, but it takes time. It's a process of discipleship, finding those people and building that team. So before we talk about how to get those people, how to recruit them, I'm just going to talk about a few different roles of the core team. So first of all, when we're looking at core team, I like to think of it not so much, I guess in roles, but more in layers. And so I have 5 different layers that I think of when I think of the core team. So we have in the middle is the youth ministry coordinator. Then when we go out, we have the ministry team. Then out the next level is the support team. Out the 4th level is the parent discipleship team. And finally, but probably most importantly, is the prayer team. So let's talk about each of these roles, and we'll just talk about them each briefly. So first we have the youth ministry coordinator, and chances are this is you, or if it's not you, you are working to help find this person. So the youth ministry coordinator, they are the primary leader of the program. Now, I think it's important to note that this shouldn't be like a bunch of people, but this should really be 1 or 2 people who are basically where the buck stops, who are the main people that organize and oversee. It doesn't mean that other roles aren't as important, but there has to be that main leader person, that main point person who reports back to the pastor or whoever would be over youth ministry, which hopefully would be the pastor. Now, it is also important to note that the youth ministry coordinator, or maybe better put, the youth minister, that's what we're talking about here, they don't have to be necessarily the face of the program. What I mean by that is when we're doing different gatherings and different things, a lot of times, and I think probably most cases, the youth minister is the one who's going to be, mainly speaking, facilitating, but it doesn't have to be like that. Again, a lot of times it is, but I'll give you a quick example. When I was in high school, so I was in a big parish, we had a really vibrant youth ministry program. And our youth minister, she was amazing, but she was certainly not like one of these people who was always up in front. She was probably, when it came to like the adult core meetings, she was the main person speaking and doing stuff like that. But with youth events, she usually took a back seat, not because she wasn't super involved, but because she was very good. She understood her own role and her own personality, and she was very good at empowering other people, figuring out other people's roles, and putting them into positions of success. So I think it just comes back to this idea that there's a lot of different ways to lead. Leadership can be the person who's in front, who's like the super bubbly person, who isn't afraid to speak in front of people. But leadership can also be, taking a step back and leading from behind. So I think it's important to note that. Now, this person, just from a practical standpoint, should be present at pretty much all the youth things, or most of them. But yeah, so that's the youth ministry coordinator. When we move out a layer, now we have the ministry team. And I think when we think of the idea of a core team, this is probably the first group of people and the primary people that come to mind when we're thinking of core team. The ministry team is really the central team. They're the people that are helping us to vision, helping us to plan, and helping us to facilitate events from the ministry standpoint. So these are the people that are going to be doing, the speaking, witnessing, who are going to be helping with the planning, who are going to be leading prayer, leading icebreakers, leading games, doing small groups. They're going to really be the main relational ministers, the main people doing relational ministry. So yeah, that's basically the ministry team. The next group is our support team, and the support team is a little different than the ministry team. First of all, the support team isn't a group of people that has to be present at everything or even most of the things. These are the people who are just kind of providing behind the scenes help, maybe not a lot of the relational ministry, but making events and programs run from kind of the administrative standpoint. So the way I would do this when I used to work in a parish is we had our ministry team, and they would be at a lot of our stuff. They would be leading a lot of our things. But then when it came to the support team, that was typically like I would take all the parents of teams in our programs, or all the parents of teams of the parish, and basically put out, here's all the things we need. And probably the biggest thing was like cooking and serving food, but it could also be, setting up for events, making flyers, doing other things, being a chaperone for trips, but kind of like having that sort of wider, larger team of people that, hey, we need you to come and maybe cook and serve a meal one or two of our gatherings during the year, and kind of getting people there. Not really like a huge time commitment, but sort of the people that, that kind of when needed can and are good at maybe those behind the scenes roles. Then we have the parent discipleship team, and this is kind of an interesting group. So I think this group of people, first of all, they're parents, but they're not going to really be directly involved in the ministry. And so what I mean by that is this group of people isn't necessarily going to be involved in all of your gatherings. They're not going to be the ones doing relational ministry. They're not going to be the ones cooking the meals, but these are going to be more in an advisory role, number one. And number two, they're going to be your main go-to people in terms of trying to disciple and get to parents that may not be in that core group of people that you're dealing with in your parish. But maybe it's the parents of families on the fringes. Maybe it's parents who are part of families that aren't even part of your parish or aren't even Catholic. But we're called in ministry and just in parish work and church work in general to reach everyone, especially those people on the margins. And that can be hard to do, especially, if you have a parent who has kind of like a negative view of the parish. Maybe they have a negative view of the religious ed program or confirmation program because their kid played football and couldn't make all these required things, and so they're mad. I don't know, I'm just using that as an example. But so how do you reach those parents who may not be or desire to be actively involved? And I think it's identifying those core parents that are involved, that have a desire to disciple. So this could be as simple as, meeting 2 or 3 times a year with these parents and basically talking about, advising for this is what we want to see in youth ministry, but also, encouraging them and empowering them to go and reach out to those families that are beyond to advocate and support youth ministry. So a good example of this would be like if you have a parent who who's really involved in your program, or really supportive of sending their kids, and they know a parent who isn't, but they're like best friends with this person, you can say, hey, Joe, go work on Steve over there and see if you can advocate youth ministry, using sort of that channel to do that. So that's the parent discipleship team. And then finally, I had an extra slide. I didn't have a slide for this last one, but the prayer team. And simply put, this is just getting an intentional group of people to pray for your program. And this could be like, while there's gatherings going on, having a group that meets in the church to pray, or even that doesn't have to physically meet together, but maybe just giving them something intentional on a weekly or daily basis that they can pray to support our program. And again, I think the prayer team is going to be the most vital role, because our ministry is only possible through prayer, through inviting the Holy Spirit to be a part of what we're doing. Now, the nice thing, the way I like to think about all these things in terms of layers, and I'll go back to that first slide, is that certainly we'd love everyone to just be right there in the middle with the ministry team. But a lot of times that's not realistic. In fact, it's going to be hard at first, I think, to find people who want to serve in those roles of ministry. For the simple fact that when we're trying to recruit people, I think one of the common questions we're going to get is, what's the time commitment? Or, I don't think I can devote that much time. Or, I don't know if I feel comfortable doing youth ministry. I don't know if I feel comfortable talking to teenagers. And so if we have these other layers that we can plug them into, maybe they're a parent that comes to 1 or 2 gatherings a year to help us prepare a meal. Or maybe you, at the very least, you could say, well, would you mind just praying for us on a weekly basis? And I think if we have that approach, slowly over time, as someone gets more involved, let's take an example. Let's say you have a parent or a parishioner who you're trying to get to do youth ministry, and they don't feel comfortable with any of it at all, but like they'll commit to praying once a week for your program. And so you go through the year, halfway through the year, this person, they have teenagers and families and youth ministry on their mind because they're praying a lot, and so they're thinking, I've been praying, maybe I want to come to 1 or 2 of these gatherings just to help prepare a meal, just to put faces to the names of people I'm praying for. And so they come and they cook a meal for one of your events in the spring, and they get to know some of the other core members. Maybe they talk to a couple of the teenagers, and then the next year they say, maybe I want to help lead a small group. And then I think just slowly that process over time, getting them to maybe start more on the outside and slowly work their way in, giving people options and layers to sort of work through is a good way, rather than just say, here's our core team, will you be part of it and join us for everything we do? Because that can be overwhelming. Certainly we need some of those people at the beginning. But again, like I said, it's a slow process in stages. If we can get maybe 2 or 3 core people who are on the ministry team, and then some more people on the outside, and then over time, over those 3 to 5 years, building that core team by sort of inviting those people from the outside to the inside, and then inviting more people to be a part of youth ministry. I think that's a key way to look at it. So let's move back ahead now through the slides. Okay, so let's talk about recruiting a core team. So this is one of the challenges, and I don't think I have like the secret formula to do this or anything. Really, I have mainly 2 main ways of recruiting. Number one, the general invitation, which we talked a little bit about last time when we were talking about assessing the parish. And this is just, having a general invite, preferably through when we're giving our talk at masses, and giving them that concrete opportunity to talk to you maybe after mass, a general announcement through an email, through Facebook, through the bulletin, whatever that may be. Now, I think it's important. I think we should do the general announcement invitation, but that's most likely not going to be the biggest way in which you're going to get people. Really, the best way, and I think this is common with anything that you're trying to recruit anyone to do, is through personal invitation. So this can start by just intentionally targeting people that in your parish, people that may be good at doing youth ministry, or may have a heart for doing something along the lines of youth ministry, serving in that core team in any of those layers. I think it's also important to talk to your pastor, talk to the parish staff, talk to people that are close to the situation, to get their input, because obviously they may know of other people and then specifically calling or reaching out to that person in person. And then finally, and we talked about this last week with the assessment process, when we've gone through this assessment process of surveying, of talking to people, of getting input, trying to identify those people, and maybe it's parents, maybe it's just other parishioners, but those people who seem to have a general interest in youth ministry. Maybe it's a parent who they answered on their survey, I want my kid to go on a retreat or have like a deeper relationship with God, who actually, you can tell actually cares about the spiritual well-being of their child. They could be someone who you reach out to, or maybe it's someone who specifically said they expressed interest in that. So I think, but again, that personal invite. So not just expecting that they would come to you, but when you see that name, immediately contacting them or trying to figure out a way that you can contact them, and then making the point to say, and this is with anyone that we're trying to recruit, that there are a lot of layers to the core team. There's a lot of ways that people can help out. Because again, I think, we're going to need a couple of those people who can be very involved at first. But I think a lot of it is just getting someone's foot in the door, just like it is with a teenager, where we're going to go through that process of discipling and trying to build really that commitment over time. So when we think about when we're doing the core team, this is kind of like a basic timeline. I don't have actual times or like, this is how many weeks it should be before this step, but sort of just the basic steps. So we have the initial general invite. We talked about that at the last session. And then those targeted invitations. And then after we've sort of gotten an interest of people who could potentially be on the core team, again, at this point, you're not necessarily asking for a commitment to do something, but just if someone's interested, having like a core team informational meeting. And this doesn't need to be something that's long. This could be literally 20 or 30 minutes, but a meeting where you're talking about the vision of youth ministry and then talking about those layers of the core team and just trying to get people to see where they would like to be involved at. Having this meeting, I think, at as convenient of a time as possible for people in the parish. So maybe offering, my suggestion would be offering two options for this. One, like between masses on a Sunday morning, and then another one during a weeknight. But once we've done that, after we've had that informational meeting, then it's time to start figuring out who will actually be on the core team. And so we have that first meeting, and when we're talking about the core meetings really from this point forward, I think anyone on the core team would be invited, but these would primarily be for those people serving on the ministry team. So having a meeting where, we're getting to know each other, we're talking about the purpose of youth ministry at your specific parish, talking about that idea of vision, and then having another meeting to really plan and map out the year, which again, in the next session, session 4, we're going to be talking about looking at the year as a whole and what are some methods we can use. But yeah, mapping out the year, looking at what our theme will be, and then after that, having a meeting specifically geared toward planning your kickoff, planning some sort of big gathering that's going to kick off the year, and we'll talk about some methods for that in the last 2 sessions as well. Over the summer, I put core training and retreat day, and over the summer, one of the options we're going to offer with this program is we're going to have kind of like a day long, or maybe it'll be like a morning into early afternoon retreat day and training day that you'll be invited to attend with your core members if you'd like to. And I think over something like this, we're talking about just like basic things, how to witness to teens, how to do relational ministry, how to lead a small group. We'll also talk about safe environment stuff in that too, if you're not aware of those things. And then after that, having one or maybe a couple final core meetings before the program officially launches. And then after you've launched with that kickoff meeting on a consistent basis, ideally if you're starting with like monthly meetings, maybe it's meeting or monthly gatherings with teens, maybe it's meeting once a month with your core team to continue to plan out that process. So that's basically what I have when we're talking about a core team. The last slide I want to just bring up here, and this wouldn't necessarily officially be part of your core team, but I think when we're looking to build our program and we're really looking to empower individuals to help us grow, certainly we're hoping to get that base group of teens that are involved, but even among those identifying some teams that are leaders. Now, this may not be something that you are able to do now, or maybe there are a couple of teams that you see in leadership roles or in those kind of higher stages of discipleship right now. But this would be a goal for the end of the first year, is to find maybe 2 or 3 of those sort of key youth that are in those later stages of discipleship that you can really empower to not officially be a part of a core team for a high school youth ministry. If it was a middle school youth ministry you're doing, I think certainly they could have a lot more roles on sort of like a middle school core team. But these people you're going to want to try to empower them to advocate youth ministry to other teens. There's a lot of ways to reach out to teens, but probably the most effective way is really through other teenagers. We're probably not going to be showing up at the high school and handing out flyers. That would just be weird, especially if the teens there don't know you at all. But if they have one of their friends who's like, hey, we have this cool youth group at our church, would you like to join or check it out or come be on our volleyball team or something like that? Identifying some of these key people to both advocate, but also once within the program itself, be sort of their mentors and peer ministers to the other people in the program by witnessing. Again, it could be serving on a middle school core team or a lot of other roles. One program we have available in the diocese that we'd love for you to take advantage of is our diocesan youth discipleship team. Our discipleship team, it's basically a team made of youth, and it's open to any parish in the diocese. And we ask parishes to nominate a couple kids from their parish who may have skills of leadership or may be in those higher areas of discipleship. And what we do is we start out with a retreat for them in August, and then meet on a once-a-month basis for prayer, for community with other teens in the program. But then also, the main thing is giving them skills in missionary discipleship to go back to the parishes to help you to recruit more teens to your youth ministry program. So that's something that's available. We just are concluding our first year of that now. We had about 15 teens in the discipleship team this year, hoping to grow on that for next year. And again, that's something that's a resource to the parishes, and information for that can be found on the website at newworcester.org, and I believe it's under the youth tab. There should be a tab or a button for diocesan youth discipleship team. So where do we go from here? Well, we've started with creating our vision, or at least a basic idea of our vision. Hopefully we've had the chance to begin the assessment process. Maybe we've completed that assessment process, got some valuable input from people in the parish. Maybe been able to speak at masses, present our vision to the parish as a whole, talk to a pastor about it, obviously, and maybe begun to expand more upon that vision. Today we talked about the core team. What are some roles? How do we recruit those people? And I think going from here, especially as we're beginning to grow our core team and we move into that first core team meeting, we're going to start planning out the year. That's basically what we're going to be moving into next. These last 2 sessions, session 4 and 5, is really going to be delving into methods. So the next session is going to be looking at methods from a large picture standpoint. So when we look at our first year and we look at the year as a whole, how do we map out the year? What are some types of gatherings we're going to be looking to do? What's the consistency of how much we should gather? What are some techniques in terms of communication to parents and teens that we should be looking at? And then the last session, we're going to be zooming into individual youth night and what that should look like. What are some methods we should be doing to make sure we're presenting the gospel message through youth ministry in a fun an engaging way, and what are some different ways to do that. So that's what we're going to be kind of moving into, and hopefully from there, once we've completed that process over the summer, it's going to be time for us to again be building up our core team, planning out with our core team, visioning, hopefully doing some sort of training with our core team, and then being ready to launch our program in the fall. So as always, thank you for joining us today, and if you can make those in-person sessions, they're certainly much more helpful, but again, these are here as a resource if you can't make it, or if you want to go back and reference anything that was talked about in the in-person session. And as always, if you have any questions or any comments, concerns, please do not hesitate to contact myself here in the youth ministry office. I'll leave a slide up here at the end with my contact information, my email, and office phone number. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you for session 4. So thanks everyone for joining us. And yeah, we'll see you for session 4 for methods of youth ministry. Have a great day and God bless.